You just gonna show up unannounced? What's up, y'all? Shout out to Fight Hub TV. Did a excellent 40-minute interview with Jim Lampley. Those of you that grew up watching HBO boxing, this just had me thinking. I saw someone wrote in the comments on the video. They said they could just listen to Jim Lampley talk boxing for hours, and I thought about this long. And that's what boxing is missing right now. It's missing the great commentators. That added a lot to the sport. DAZN seems very low budget with their commentating. I mean, when you saw George Foreman, Larry Merchant, and Jim Lampley, they brought an element of excitement to the fight game that we just don't have anymore. Listen to Jim Lampley's voice. I mean, some people just have it, and Jim Lampley has it. He knows a lot about the sport. Now, I usually say you should probably have been in box. You probably should have boxed before to know a lot about the sport, but that's not always true because a lot of people don't like Larry Merchant. He rubs people the wrong way. But Larry Merchant knows a lot about boxing. I don't know if he boxed. Jim Lampley definitely does. So there are exceptions to the rule. Somebody's got to get Jim Lampley on their broadcast. I mean, he said he hasn't commentated in 4 years. He was in Creed, and he says he's 74 now. Don't discriminate on him because of his age. Al Bernstein's up in age, and he's one of my all-time favorites. And, he's still great at what he does. Age shouldn't matter. They're great commentators. And now turning to Al Bernstein, one of the things I always liked about Al Bernstein was he was fair. He's always been fair to fighters. I've never heard him say anything with an agenda. And I just like Jim Lampley's knowledge of the sport. He's supposed to do some pay-per-view work for the upcoming Canelo Charlo fight, but he needs to be behind the mic giving blow-by-blow commentary. I mean, just the voice makes you feel like it's an event. You don't want to feel like you're just watching some regular fight outside. You want to feel like it's an event. Jim Lampley has that voice that draws you in. It's like, man, this dude, certain people just have a voice, and a presence. And Jim Lampley was talking about not only is HBO boxing gone, he said HBO is gone. He said some cell phone company bought out HBO and they got rid of the boxing. But what were they thinking? Why would you get rid of boxing? That was probably their most viewed events on that network. That's the only reason I had HBO was for the boxing. Once they switched over to Showtime, I got Showtime. Well, actually, where I was at, it switched on its own. So I was like, oh, Showtime? Oh, okay, cool. They're showing the boxing now. But we need Jim Lampley. I don't care if he's 150. I want to hear Jim Lampley at these fights. I don't want to hear no amateur dudes. Some of these guys know boxing, but they just don't have. It's like a rapper. Some rappers have lyrics, but their voice. Like I intend to do a video too, probably on my backup platform in WJ on top 5 rappers with the worst voices. To me, it doesn't matter how good your lyrics are if your voice is just bad or annoying or embarrassing to listen to in front of people. Like, man, I don't want them to think I like this. But that's what boxing's missing besides not getting the big heavyweight fights. Once we do get the big heavyweight fights, let's bring back Mr. Jim Lampley. I don't care if it's HBO. I don't care what it is, but let's bring back Jim Lampley. I used to like the music. In fact, I got the music from HBO boxing on my one of my playlists. It was just the look of it. It was an event. It was like watching, I don't want to say a Super Bowl because it was bigger than a Super Bowl. was just special watching HBO fights with those three. Now I didn't agree with everything Jim Lampley said, or Larry Merchant, or even George Foreman. George Foreman was constantly saying things. I was like, didn't you just say the opposite a few minutes ago? But George, I think, was always trying to be fair, so it would appear he was contradicting himself at times. But I don't think we'll ever have a trio like that again. Jim Lampley, Larry Merchant, and George Foreman. Wasn't too big. I like Max Kellerman, but I wasn't too big, on listening to Max so much. It's just you got to have a voice and you got to have presence, and that's what Jim Lampley has, plus knowledge of the sport. He gave a story on Fight Hub TV about how close he and Emanuel Steward were, the greatest trainer to ever be in boxing. And he had Tyson Fury in Detroit at the Kronk Gym years ago before anyone even knew who a Tyson Fury was. And Jim Lampley said, he said to Emanuel, like, who's this guy you're training? He looks clumsy and awkward or something to that effect. And he said Emanuel Steward put down his fork and said, this guy's going to be heavyweight champion and maybe an unbeatable heavyweight champion. Look at his height, weight, reach. And when he decides to sit down on his punches, he's going to be a problem. Emanuel called that right. So Jim Lampley may have never boxed, but he had the knowledge of Emanuel Steward right there to take in. So just talking to Emanuel Steward for 5 minutes, you can learn more than a lot of people that are actually in the sport, definitely fanboys. Anyway, bring Jim Lampley back. Let's start a petition. This is the J. Roos Theory. Make sure to comment, share, subscribe. LSR forever. And be fearless. Yay.